my name is Megan Varner. I am a health and wellness coach with a background as a physical therapist, and I'm passionate about helping others with POTS and chronic fatigue learn how to rebuild their energy so that they can thrive again in their lives. I am very passionate about helping this group of individuals as I myself am one of them. I have been learning how to navigate POTS, chronic fatigue, and hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome over the last decade myself, and I'm happy to say that there is hope to be able to get your life back and enjoy more of it and improving your quality of life on a daily basis. So today's video is about how to exercise during a flare. Well, the first question you're probably thinking is, you can exercise during a flare? The short answer is yes, you can exercise during a flare, but it depends. I've made a prior video that I will put a link to in the explanation underneath this video, talking in depth about the importance of learning what your patterns are like. Patterns can be measured by looking at data like heart rate and heart rate variability from something like a wearable device. There's some great ones out there. I have no affiliations with these, but I'm a fan of Oura Ring and BioStrap at the moment. I've had clients use all different types, but they can give you objective data to look at trends as to whether you're going into a flare and kind of the intensity of the flare. That may sound a little bit odd, but if you've been living with POTS or chronic fatigue, you've probably noticed some flares are better or worse than others, and looking at the numbers can help you figure these out. So depending on what your numbers are, you can determine how much to back off of exercise or how much you can continue with exercise. It's also important to realize that it depends on your baseline of your strength and aerobic conditioning, to use those fancy words, but basically how much strengthening do you do on a regular basis when you're not in a flare, and how much aerobic activity like biking or swimming or walking, or even just getting up and moving around your house and going up and down flights of stairs when you're not in a flare. If you have a low baseline, it can be helpful to consider and be mindful to yourself that your ability to push yourself during a flare is going to be a little bit lower than if you were at a little bit higher level of conditioning. If you gradually built yourself up using some type of protocol or getting guidance from the help of a coach or a physical therapist or another rehab professional in something like the CHOP protocol that's out there, or another graded exercise protocol for individuals that have POTS, if you dial it back a little bit, you can continue to do it. Again, it can be very helpful to have some outside input on how to do that. It also can depend what type of exercise that you're doing when you're in a flare. Yes, you can exercise, but if you're going to go out and do a very intense, long workout like a bike ride, or if you've gotten to the point of doing running or hiking, that can be much more taxing on the body than doing an exercise like floor-based Pilates or yoga that doesn't have a lot of inversion poses in it, or even doing a basic strength routine. When you have a condition like POTS, when we're vertical, more of our blood pools in our lower half. That can send signals up to our heart that it needs to pump faster, exacerbating our symptoms, and we can have less blood flow to our brain. So doing something where you're more recumbent, or you are totally on the floor and it's more strength-based, can be helpful when you're in a flare. The biggest piece I really like to tell myself all the time, and I remind clients of, when you're in a flare, or when you're not in a flare for that matter, but especially in a flare, it's important to listen to your body and to know what your baseline is. all of the things that I just mentioned, it depends. Knowing your baseline and listening to your body is the big teeter-totter factor of figuring out, can you push yourself to do a little bit of exercise? And remember, after 2 or 3 days, you don't lose conditioning that you've gained over the exercise that you have been doing. That said, getting up and moving around is definitely a good thing so that your blood does not continue to pool during those 2 to 3 days without exercise. So it's not just laying on the couch, but it's okay to not exercise for a short period of time if you really do need to take some time to rest and recover and move yourself through the flare back to rebuild your energy. Though, if you get to the 4 to 5 day mark, you are going to begin to have some deconditioning, and it may be time to start thinking about how you can modify the exercise approach or the activity approach that you've been doing. So I like to wrap up with sharing some tips on how you can approach this if the flare is continuing on. And you could also say these can apply to help get you through the flare and not worsen it by doing exercise. Number one, and I mentioned this in quite a few of my videos, be well hydrated and take in those electrolytes. For those of us that have fatigue issues, and especially those that involve blood pooling like POTS, it's important to make sure that you are not depleting your overall blood volume and that your electrolyte intake is helping the fluid balance maintenance in your body. That's typically potassium, sodium, and magnesium, but you also think about things like phosphorus and calcium. It could be helpful to reach out to your physician to figure out what your levels are like if you're really having a rough time of it, but it can also be a good idea to work with a dietitian or a nutritionist or even a coach to figure out how to gradually titrate up the amounts that you need to help you feel better when you're in a flare and the amounts that you need to help you maintain your energy when you're not in a flare. The second big tip is kind of hard to embrace, especially for overachievers like myself. Think 50%. If you typically do 30 minutes of exercise, cut that in half. If you typically do 10, cut that in half. The amount of exercise that you do still counts, and it can still be beneficial to helping move your body while you're in a flare. Just reduce it a little bit. There's a really great scoring out there of how much exertion you're putting out that can be helpful when you're in a flare, as it might shift into what you're typically able to do. If you aren't tracking your heart rate, you can use something called the Borg scale, or ratings of perceived exertion. There's some great visuals out there on the internet. Getting some guidance, again, from a physical therapist or another rehab professional to help you figure it out can be very helpful on the quest to do less or do 50%, like I said. For myself and for many of the clients I've worked with, staying in the green zone or the light intensity when you're in a flare can be helpful. A nice light exercise that I actually have learned to incorporate into my periods when I am having a more intensification of my symptoms and navigating through that is just doing a light walk, combining it with a type of breathing called resonant breathing practice. This is an optimized breathing that is matching what your body can generate the most power through your nervous system as you breathe in and out, versus just a set 4 in, 4 out, or 5 in, 5 out pace. If you'd like to learn more of that, drop a comment below the video and I'd love to talk to you more about that. That's a big piece that I include with my coaching to help clients figure out not only how to rebuild their energy, but how to optimize it for their particular needs, because that frequency does vary from person to person. And the final thing I will say for a tip that I alluded to before in this video is, if you are having a prolonged flare, shifting to more of a strength focus can be beneficial, especially having those strength exercises being in a lying down recumbent position or on your back or seated, as those still get your blood flow pumping, and that muscle tone is helping prevent the pooling in blood in your lower half, returning it back up to your heart and to your brain, and it's reversing or at least slowing any type of deconditioning long term that can happen when you're not able to do quite as much exercise during an intense flare. If you are interested in more personalized guidance in how to navigate a flare and figure out how you can continue to incorporate exercise or begin to incorporate exercise into your routine, I would love to talk to you. I offer a free consultation for anyone that is interested in speaking with me. If you'd like to get in contact with me, please reach out via email to megan.varner@guidetoresilience.com, or you can drop a comment below this video and I will check and reply in due time. Take care of yourselves, be patient, and remember to listen to your body.